Well, hello there, and welcome to Slooh, your interface to outer space. I'm Jerry Montour, your host and expedition leader, and tonight we celebrate the gas giant Saturn. Now, Saturn is at opposition today, but what does that mean? Well, we'll be getting to that in just a second. But first, let's take a look at our live feeds for tonight's show, and to do that, we welcome our friend, Slooh astronomer Paul Cox, to the show. Paul, world traveler, just back from our observatory in the Canary Islands. How's it going?
Very well, thank you, Jerry. And we have got a spectacular night to be capturing the opposition of Saturn tonight. We can see here actually our first camera. We're skipping through the cameras already, but what we were seeing there was our all-sky camera. But here we've got the live view from our wide field telescope. Now this will turn to color any second, but if we hop back to the all-sky camera, this is our special low-light camera, because the first thing you want to do when you're checking, when you want to go out and do some observing, are sky conditions. Look at this moonless night, Jerry. Dark sky. We can see the Milky Way. That's not a cloud there. That's the Milky Way stretching up through there. Now, if you look just above the V in live V, there's the brightest star there. Kind of got a slightly reddish glow to it. That is Saturn. So from northern hemisphere, it kind of hovers fairly low on the southern horizon, but we'll talk about how viewers can see this themselves in their own backyards. But we've got a whole stack of other cameras. We've got our constellation cam looking at Saturn tonight. Now this view, I love this. The very brightest object there, Jerry, is Saturn. So just offset from the center. But this is actually centered, this view, almost on the center of our Milky Way galaxy. And once again, you can see the Milky Way stretching up there. In fact, just to the left of center, you can see some little smudges there. That's actually the Trifid Nebula, would you believe, and some globular clusters in there as well. And there's the Lagoon Nebula in there as well. But we've also got our spectacular close-up views as well from our other telescopes. We've got our Canary 2 telescope, which is showing us a fairly wide angle view. Now, that one looks a little bit stretched to me, actually, vertically. So the studio might want to sort that out, because actually Saturn, and we'll see it in these images tonight, is actually quite squashed because it's spinning around so quickly. It's one of my favorite terms in the whole of astronomy. It's called an oblate spheroid. And I always think an oblate spheroid sounds like something you really need to see your doctor about. But we've also tonight got our new Canary 4 solar system telescope, and this is going to give us our closest views tonight. And they've been looking fairly spectacular early on. So this will come into color as well. Now, just like any night, we're going to be carrying on watching these live images throughout the show. Some will be slightly crisper than others because planetary imaging out of all kinds of astro imaging through telescopes is affected by what are called seeing conditions. This is how stable the atmosphere is. And actually you could see it there. It suddenly clicked to the next image and suddenly it's a little bit crisper. So we capture these moments of perfect seeing high at our observatory at the Institute of Astrophysics of the Canary Islands. And that's why we're there, Jerry. We're 8,000 feet above most of that horrible, turbulent atmosphere low down. So we've got these splendid views all night. Now, the studio will also show us our ultra-wide field views as well, because in there, viewers will see a little white dot just to the south, just below. In fact, we should start seeing it in there. They'll see a little white dot just below, and that is Saturn's largest moon, Titan. And Bob will probably tell us a little bit more about that later on. But we've got all of these great live views tonight. Really cool.
Fantastic stuff. Now, Paul, when you say it's going to come into color, exactly why is it changing color?
Well, because astronomical CCD cameras are actually monochrome. So what we do is the Slooh telescopes, they take a whole series of different filtered images through red, green and blue filters. And it's actually Slooh's patented technology that combines all of these in real time and then streams them out to members. Because all of these telescopes that we're watching tonight, these are the telescopes that Slooh members control every single night, as well as our telescopes down at our Chile Observatory tonight, which unfortunately is clouded out tonight. But we were hoping to get some better views down there, because we'll talk about that actually later on in the show as well, Jerry. Southern Hemisphere, Saturn is far, far better placed. Oh, look, there are the horrible clouds in Chile. But Saturn is far, far higher in the sky for those people living in the Southern Hemisphere than us poor Northerners.
All right, let's talk some specific numbers if you can, Paul. How far away is Saturn?
Well, it's far enough away to turn our telescopes into time machines. The light that we're seeing there, that our Slooh telescopes have captured, and those CCD cameras are capturing all those lovely little photons, they actually left Saturn an hour ago, more than an hour ago. Now, if you want that in miles, that's it's around 750 million miles. That's roughly 8 times the distance between the Sun and the Earth. Now, tonight, Bob's going to go into this a little bit more later on. Tonight, it's as close as it gets because it's at opposition. The rest of the year, it can reach out to about 1 billion miles away from Earth.
And just how large is Saturn? I mean, compared to Earth, let's say.
Compared to Earth, you could fit roughly 764 Earth inside Saturn. But here's the rub. It's only 95 times the mass of Earth. And that's because Saturn is the least dense planet. In fact, it's less dense than water. So if you could find a bath or a swimming pool big enough, Saturn would float in it. I always love that little bit of a factoid about it. But, join up Saturn and Jupiter, and they actually account for around 92% of all of the planetary mass. And that includes asteroids and comets and stuff like that within the inner solar system. So, I mean, these two gas giants really dominate our solar system.
Yeah, big. Okay, and we like to look at it during opposition again because it's closest.
It's roughly at its closest. It's actually closest a couple of days either side, but it's closest to Earth, which means its apparent size is bigger for us, and that means we can discern more detail. It's also brighter as well. So there's a long period though around opposition. On the months around each planet, we can kind of see it around 9 months of the year, each planet, through the Slooh telescopes, and it's in that kind of middle 6 months around opposition. They always look absolutely spectacular.
And Paul, we get a little color change using the wide field telescope, I see.
Yeah, this one, as you can see, this one's been affected a little bit by this little shaking of the turbulence. Our new Canary 4 telescope, though, this is the one that it's been honed, it's been optimized. Here it is. It gives us a larger view. For want of a better term, we can zoom in on objects far better. So it's optimized for all of the planets. Jupiter looks spectacular in it. Uranus, Neptune look great. We can see their moons in it, but it also looks great. We have some brilliant close-ups of the moon and some lunar features in that telescope last night. So this is the one certainly that I would recommend Slooh members use if they want to be imaging any of the planets or get up close to an asteroid or comet maybe as well.
All right, Paul, it's going to be a good show. Thanks a million.
It is.
Paul returns a bit later on to talk about how our members can use our telescopes to capture Saturn any night and to take a dive into our community content. We've got some good content for you tonight. We'll see some of our community's favorite things and what they say about Saturn. All right, still to come on the show. Thanks to Paul, we know a little bit more about Saturn, but there are still plenty of questions to ask. We've got just the people to answer them. First up, it's Bob Berman, who's going to give us an inside look at the ringed gas giant. He'll be answering all our questions about oppositions, how they happen, and why scientists and we are interested in them. Then Slooh's human spirit editor, Helen Avery, will be along to explore some of the spiritual beliefs surrounding Saturn. There were some interesting and sometimes gruesome stories surrounding the planet, and who doesn't like gruesome? We're going to take a look at some of the biggest. And we'll be speaking to a very special guest when Roger Craig Smith joins the show. Roger is a voice actor known for playing Sonic the Hedgehog a handful of your favorite superheroes and other video game characters. But he's also an avid space lover. He's an amateur astronomer and astrophotographer. We'll be talking to him about his passion for space and what inspired him to look up. That's all coming up in just a few minutes. A good show coming up, so don't wander off. We're excited to announce the release of our first book, The Saturn Above It, an anthology of short fiction about space. Available now at Slooh.com. We're excited to announce the release of our first book, The Saturn
to be here. Opposition means that we look one way in the sky and we see the sun, and we look the opposite way from the sun, and that's where Saturn will be tonight. And that means as the sun sets, Saturn rises. When the sun is at its lowest at midnight, actually 1 a.m. during these daylight saving time months, that's when Saturn is at its highest of the night. Opposite makes a lot of sense. But we're interested because right around, as Paul said, right around the time of opposition, and today it happens to be right on this very day, Saturn is at its closest of the year. So this is when it's biggest, when it shows the most detail. And I love the detail that we're seeing. There are things that if all of our viewers tonight were my friends at the observatory and we were gathering around and they said, well, what should I be looking for? You know what I would tell them?
What would that be?
And we can see it through the Slooh telescopes. This is not always easy. Number one, look at how those rings are tilted. They're not edgewise. They're not like a single line going across Saturn. Slowly the angle changes, and not everything in the universe changes. You could look at the Orion Nebula, or Paul mentioned the Trifid Nebula, until there's no humans on Earth anymore, and it'll never change. But Saturn's rings change during its 29.4577 year path around the sun. I know that number because my attaché case, I programmed that in as the number that I have to click to make the attaché case open. 29.4577, almost 30 years.
Of course,
and in those 30 years,
of course
twice in those 30 years, the rings are going to be edgewise and just look like a line, and twice Saturn's going to be maximally tilted our way, and that's what's happening right now. And when that happens, through a good telescope like this, and on the night of opposition, like now, here's what you can look for. Instead of the ball of Saturn blocking the backside of the rings, we should go to maximum magnification if we can through that telescope that shows maximum magnification. If we could jump back to that. Instead of the rings on the far side disappearing behind the ball of Saturn, look at this. The outer part of the outer ring, which is called the A ring, unimaginatively, that A ring, look how you can trace it out completely around Saturn. It's not hidden. The outside of it is not hidden, right? You don't see that every day. Believe me, you wait 15 years to see that. Number two, look on the top of Saturn where that A ring goes around and it looks black. You know what that black is? That's Saturn's shadow being cast onto the rings. And look how that shadow goes straight back. Now, just a few weeks from now, that shadow is going to go off to one side. And a few weeks ago, that shadow angled off to the other side. But it's straight back because we here on Earth, using the Slooh telescope, are in between the Sun and Saturn. And so in that in-between position, Saturn's on one side of us, the Sun is on the other. And so the shadow has to go straight back. The Sun is in the same direction that we're looking at. So the shadow goes straight back from Saturn. That's so cool. Number three, look at the outside of the rings and it looks darker than the rest of the rings. Well, there are two main rings, the A ring and the B ring. Boy, they could use some poets or people with imagination on the IAU's naming committee. That's the organization that names things in the sky. But okay, the main ring is the wider, brighter, lighter ring, and that's the ring that's closer to Saturn. And then outside of it is a darker, narrower ring, and the two are separated by yet another thing to look for, the Cassini division. That's a gap, an inky black, tiny, it's only half a second of arc wide. Theoretically, we shouldn't even be seeing it, but look, we can see it tonight. The Cassini division that separates the two rings shows up as a dark band completely running around Saturn. So these are the main things to look for. I'd also see if I could see a white band near the equator of Saturn, right near the middle, almost right where the rings that are closest to us are passing in front of Saturn. There's actually a white, wide band on Saturn. Saturn doesn't have all that fancy detail, that intricate detail Jupiter does, but this is the main thing to look for. Can you see it? I can see it. Can you see it, Jerry? That white, that lighter colored band. It's a little subtle.
Yep. So Bob, it sounds like this is by far the best time to look at Saturn.
Oh, it is, and it's so exciting, and we're seeing all the cool stuff that one tries to see on Saturn. There it is.
Now, do all planets experience opposition of some sort?
Yeah, they do. And if the planet were not moving in space, then the opposition or lineup between the sun and the Earth and the planet would happen once a year. For example, Pluto moves so slowly, taking 248 years to go around the sun, that its opposition essentially is the same date the following year plus 1 day. So it's moved on a little bit. So we have to go around once around the sun. That's 1 year, plus just one more day of Earth's motion, and then we're lined up with the sun and us and Pluto again. Neptune, almost the same day, almost the same thing. It's 1 year plus 2 days. So as you head inward, it's a little bit more than a year. By the time we get to Saturn, it's 378 days, roughly a year plus half a month later, and then you get to the next opposition. With Jupiter, it's a year and a month, and that's how it works.
Bob, before we let you go, I want to get back to something you mentioned a few minutes ago, and that was theoretically there was something we were looking at that we shouldn't be able to see, but we were. What was that again?
Well, the Cassini division, that dark gap between the A ring and the B ring, is so narrow at less than 1 arc second that the theoretical limit of the telescope has not been exceeded because the Slooh telescope is so big that it can handle that. But Earth's atmosphere usually prevents you from seeing something that's sub 1 arc second in size. And the fact that there it was, clear as a bell tonight, shows that how close Saturn is, how precious this opposition is, and how good the Slooh telescopes are to let us see that. The Cassini division. Tell that to everybody at the office water cooler tomorrow. Say, I saw the Cassini division, and see if they care.
Well, they better. They better. Hey, Bob, it's nice to see you again, and I'm glad you're psyched about this because it's awesome to watch.
Thank you, Jerry. Yeah,
I am. Bob Berman, astronomy journalist and author. Appreciate it. Well, if you want to take a look at Saturn, you certainly can. As we've mentioned, Slooh members are able to book time on any of our telescopes in the Canary Islands and Chile. Take a look at Saturn or any of the visible planets. check out some galaxies or nebulae. If you want to know more about how to do that, just stick around. Paul will be back to fill us in on how you can use Slooh's telescopes to look at Saturn in just a few minutes. Also coming up, we know a little more about the planet Saturn, but now we're going to get to know a bit more about how humans have reacted to seeing Saturn in the sky. Slooh's human spirit editor, Helen Avery, will be on the show to tell us some of her favorite stories. And still to come, voice actor Roger Craig Smith will be here to tell us how he became such a fan of outer space. And we'll take a look at some of his gorgeous astrophotography. So stay with us.
Slooh is excited to announce a very special guest joining us from the Planetary Society. On June 21st, we welcome Bill Nye to the show to talk all about the summer solstice and this summer's solar eclipse.
Hello again and welcome back. It's Saturn at opposition here on Slooh. I'm Jerry Montour, your host. We're looking live at the gas giant through our telescopes in the Canary Islands right now. Our thanks to Bob Berman and Paul Cox. And we've gotten to know a lot more about the science behind Saturn. But as with all things, that's only part of the story. What's the other part? Well, it's all about how humans have reacted to this bright planet in the night sky. And here to give us some insight into the cultural response to Saturn is Slooh's human spirit editor, Helen Avery. Helen, so welcome back to the show. So Saturn is seen as a very mystical planet. Is that correct?
It is. I mean, practically speaking, spirituality aside, all the planets are kind of mystical, aren't they? Because apart from Earth, I suppose, although even that is a mystery to, because we don't know much about them. And we know some stuff about them, but we don't really get to experience them. But from a spiritual standpoint, all of the planets have have a symbolism. They each stand for something. But Saturn in particular is kind of more mysterious than most, I guess. And that's because, ancient astronomers and astrologers, Saturn was the last planet they could see, pre-telescope. That was it. So for them, it was like a border planet, that there was this great unknown beyond Saturn. And Saturn was like the final frontier, or the gatekeeper, or portal, if you will. So it's sort of got this quality, should I say, of sort of being this planet that indicates that there is like a timelessness beyond, whether that's beyond your mind or beyond that planet, and then everything else that comes before it is sort of in this sort of manifest world, this physical world. So a really sort of intriguing planet to ancient peoples, and it's sort of, when it was around, or very bright, it sort of was a real sort of wake up call that there's so much unknown out there. Super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Saturn, as we call it here in the West, was obviously named after the Roman god. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So as you point out, the Roman god came before the naming, and the Roman god also, interestingly, has this sort of sense of time around him. So Saturn was like, the hierarchy of gods, but to the Romans, Saturn was super god. It was one of the first god of Rome. And Saturn sort of ruled in what was called this golden age. And that was this age, sort of ages go in cycles. Sadly, we're not in a golden age right now, but golden age was a time on Earth of great peace and prosperity and longevity and no disease and abundance and fertility and vitality. And Saturn was like the ruler during this period. So it was almost like heaven on earth. And he's also represented liberation, and then later came to represent time, become the god of time. But he had this amazing temple built for him. And there it is in ruins, and not really the original one, but that's you can get a sense of how important he was. And then he had a festival that happened every December, where it sort of went on for several days and was sort of seen as like heaven on earth. And one of the really lovely things I think about this festival, Saturnalia, it was called, like Saturnmania, Saturnalia. That people did role reversals. So even though everything was very hunky-dory and there was harmony, there were masters and there were slaves. But during this time, they exchanged roles for a few days. So the slaves were the masters and the masters became the slaves, which, So yeah, he was a really sort of great god, really, for the Romans. Really great. So apt for this planet, because it's an amazing planet.
That's very cool. I'm just kind of bummed to find out we're not in a golden age now, but that's just me. And then we have the Greeks, Helen, who had a bit less of a happy story for their god Saturn, right?
I know, you can always trust the Greeks to bring the drama. What is with them? So, so the Greeks, the Greek god that then Saturn sort of came out of was Cronus. Cronus, there he is. Not to be confused with Kronos with a CH, that actually was the god of time. And I personally feel that that has more resonance with Saturn. But this god, Cronus, had a really lovely story. He was told his destiny, and his destiny was that one of his children was going to kill him. So, not being able to keep his trousers done, he still went out and procreated. But to stop this destiny happening, he ate all of his babies. Right. So, however, and Goya was so disturbed. Yeah, Goya, the Spanish painter, was quite disturbed a period of his life. He sort of was challenged by humanity's issues, and he painted this. And this is Saturn devouring his son. And he painted it on the wall. It was a series of paintings in his house in Milan. But there's a couple of paintings like this inspired by this story. But anyway, what happened in the end was his very final child, Zeus, his sister Rhea, Cronus' sister Rhea, sort of duped Cronus and wrapped up a stone in swaddling, and Cronus just went, oh, thought it was Zeus. It wasn't, it was just a stone. And then Zeus grows up later, and the gods help Zeus. There it is, the stone that he gobbles up. He doesn't look so mean, does he? And yet he is. But anyway, so Zeus grows up and goes to kill Cronus. And what happens is the gods help him and they give him a potion. Cronus drinks this potion that makes him vomit up all of his children. And then they all live happily ever after, apart from Cronus, who dies.
And Helen, that is precisely why I am now a vegetarian. Just a little something for you there. All right, so let's move along. What does it mean from a spiritual standpoint when Saturn is so bright in the sky right now?
I know, look at it. It's so beautiful. I personally always think it's the meaning you give it. So whatever the spiritual meaning is what you make it. And so me personally, I looked at Saturn through a telescope 20 years ago. When I was 5. No,
yeah, okay.
Sadly not.
Right.
But I looked at Saturn through a telescope, and I have to say my life changed after that. Like, I felt there's something when you see Saturn that is, with its rings, is so it's so shocking, or like you just sort of realize how much you don't know and how vast the universe is. So for me, I think the best thing to do at this time is go out, get a telescope, or have a look at it here, and sort of make your own spiritual meaning, because something will happen for you, I believe. Like when you look at Saturn, it's just so magical and mystical. But that aside, it's sort of, when it's very bright in the sky like it is seen as like a time to really do the deep dive and ask those big questions like who am I, and go beyond. Because as humans, we go out into space and we're looking beyond and we're trying to explain like the universe, but how often do we sort of try and explain what is the being of a human being? Like, who are we? It's very deep. Like, there's this timeless part of ourselves that we don't even explore, and yet we explore the universe. And so when Saturn's this bright in the sky, it's said to be a reminder, like, don't ignore your own self. In fact, in Vedic astrology, Saturn is called Shani, and we get the word shun from that word Shani, and obviously shun means ignore. And so when we see it in the sky, it's like, don't ignore, like, go inside, ask yourself, or look deeper into the unknown and see what lies there.
Well, it's fascinating, and I look at these pictures, Helen, and I think that can't be real, but it is real, and it makes you think, well, maybe we could believe anything is possible now. Hey, Helen, thanks so much as always for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jerry.
Well, these kinds of stories are exactly the types of things that you can find in Slooh's community content. They're also exactly the kind of thing you can add to that community content if you're so inclined. Just head over and click on the community tab on the left to jump in and explore. And you can read others' posts like them and even post your own. It's a lot of fun. All right, still to come here on the show, we'll be speaking to a very special guest, voiced actor Roger Craig Smith, who, in addition to playing some of your favorite characters, is also a big fan of space. And Paul Cox returns to tell you how you as a Slooh member can use our telescopes to look at Saturn yourself. So stay with us.
We've been all over the world chasing solar eclipses to share with you. This time, you're coming with us. Join Slooh as we expedition to Stanley, Idaho to celebrate the transcontinental eclipse on August 21st. Sign up today at slooh.com. Space is limited.
Slooh is excited to announce a very special guest joining us from the Planetary Society. On June 21st, we welcome Bill Nye to the show to talk all about the summer solstice and this summer's solar eclipse.
Hey there, and welcome back as we continue to look live. A beautiful shot of Saturn, the gas giant, using our telescopes in the Canary Islands. Wow. Well, here at Slooh, our members come from a variety of backgrounds, from hard science to space enthusiasts and astrophotographers to stargazers. We got it all here at Slooh. And speaking of which, or speaking of whom, Roger Craig Smith is an amateur astronomer, space lover, and astrophotographer. He's also a voice actor and has probably given voice to some of your favorite video game characters. Roger, welcome to the show. I got to get your first of all, I get your thoughts on these feeds tonight, because as far as I'm concerned, this is absolutely spectacular.
It's gorgeous. To be able to see the shadow like that is really, really spectacular. That was something that actually took me sort of by surprise last night in anticipation of this event. I went out last night with my scope and thought, oh, I've not seen this in the times that I've been looking at Saturn and trying to photograph Saturn. So this is a really special time, and you guys are getting exceptional images. So and then of course mixing it in with people eating their children. It's
Yes.
could there be anything better?
No, we run
That
the
was
gamut
dark.
here. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You think?
Yeah.
What kind of telescope do you have?
I have a Celestron Edge HD 11-inch, and then I recently got, and I'm still trying to learn. I got a solar scope last year, and hopefully that'll come in quite handy come August.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, I'm forgetting the manufacturer, but it's one of the it's one of the usual manufacturers on that solar scope. But that's about it. And then and two little Canon DSLR cameras are usually what I image with. I do have CCD, but I haven't graduated yet to really quite understanding how to image with that, with the filter wheels and all that. But that lies ahead.
Well, maybe you can hang out with Paul Cox, because he'll be out there with us, of course, in August. How did you get? You're heavily invested in this thing. How'd you get interested in space in the first place?
It started. What happened was when I started working more, and I wasn't really necessarily. I had always sort of been interested in astronomy. At junior college, one of the only classes that I really thoroughly enjoyed was an astronomy class. It was just a basic requirement. And I just remember being sort of really every single time that we were in session, having my mind blown by different things that were going on out there. And then it was some years later that I finally started to earn a little bit of money to the point where I could afford to look into this hobby. And the job during the day requires sort of instant availability, and I didn't really have the option of pursuing a lot of other hobbies that would allow me to sort of block out the time during the day. And suddenly this became something that I could do at night without worry of interruption or about worry of, oh, hey, so and so is calling and they'd like you to be ready to go in the next 30 minutes, kind of thing. It's perfect that you guys have me on for the Saturn broadcast, because the hook for me was was like a really cheap Orion, very beginner basic scope that I had bought many years ago, and seeing Saturn through that for the first time was just transformative. It was definitely one of those moments where you just think, my gosh, I cannot believe I'm seeing this through this that I bought, that I figured out how to point it in the right direction. All those things kind of came together to have me really just hooked. And Saturn, especially when you look at these images like the ones you guys are capturing tonight, it almost seems fake. It looks like clip art in the sky. It doesn't look like something that should be out there, and yet it is. And every night since then, and to this day, I mean, there's still times that I still am out there taking images or whatever, and I take a second and I just stop and I look up and I think, man, this is out here. This show is going on all the time. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is wild, and I don't know if we can get the studio to put one of your stills back up. But we just saw a couple of shots of the Milky Way, one from Alabama. Do you remember the first time you were able to capture the Milky Way in an image that you were happy with? You remember what that was like?
I do. The irony is that it was actually at this location. That dock photograph is in a little area called Little Payette Lake, which is in McCall, Idaho. And it was almost a year ago today that that I started out. I had attempted like star trails and a couple little attempts at planetary imaging prior to this, and I thought, oh, I'm never going to be able to do the Milky Way. Right? I didn't know how to actually achieve it, and so I got online, started doing some basic research, and went up to this area in McCall and snapped a very bad version of this photograph. So it was kind of a goal for me to come back a year later after having learned a little bit more and try to attempt something better. But that was probably the first time that I remember being out there in that dark sky site and being able to see it on the back of the camera, which I learned is artificially brighter than what you're actually capturing. So as soon as I went back home, I tried to edit it and it looked awful. But it was that was another sort of hook in terms of going down that rabbit hole of equipment for astrophotography and just also other objects to pursue in terms of imaging. That right there was Alabama Hills, which is actually just outside of Lone Pine, California, which has like the Mobius Arch and all these really interesting rock formations. That one was just a fun night. We were doing a little bit of light painting with the rocks on the front. But that one I've got printed up on canvas and hanging over the fireplace and all that. So yeah, I just keep going further and further down what I call that rabbit hole of astrophotography and just stargazing. It does not get old.
It certainly does not. And I've been through it myself, and I
Yeah.
continue to do it. Do you get to have any space fun? I mean, your day job as a voice actor takes up a lot of time, but how much space fun do you get to have?
Well, thankfully, the irony is that I'm in Los Angeles and I'm in Chatsworth, which is, not it's sort of like in the North Valley area of LA. And we're in this unique little pocket where just behind me, the 118 freeway starts to turn into Simi Valley. And so it's just enough darkness where I've been able to capture and image all sorts of things. I got a great image of Saturn last night. Which is not it's right over LA and all the light pollution, but thankfully with the planetary stuff, doesn't affect it as much. But quite often, I actually invested in getting a tiny little cabin just outside of Mojave in an area near Tehachapi, California. And the way I came across this place was taking out an interactive light pollution map and just trying to find some place that would be within about a 3-hour drive outside of LA so that I could go and pursue this. So I often, just about every weekend, I try to get away and I literally plan my excursions now around new moon weekends. In fact, we have Comic-Con coming up in July that happens to be on a new moon weekend, and they want me to go down to promote a particular project. And I'm shaking my fist, going, "All right, fine. I guess I'll I guess I'll give up a new moon period of time because I just covet those times when the Milky Way is up this time of year.
Yeah.
You'll find me, kind of flaking out on a lot of plans with friends and whatnot, yeah, because I want to go out to a dark sky site and get shots of the Milky Way or whatever's up there. So it's yeah, I do get to have enough fun with it, thankfully, and I've invested in that because it has such a profound effect on me. It's something that I need, which has become interesting because of how beneficial it is to just kind of get out there and realize, oh, those big problems that we think we're dealing with, and it's so restorative to be out there and just be very present in something, as opposed to worrying about, man, what am I going to do for work next week, next month, next year? Am I handling my social media properly? All those things that you just start to get very bothered by when you're underneath the stars or when you're focused on trying to image something. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Hill of beans.
Yep. Yep. Well, you're hardcore. We love that about you. And what about the total solar eclipse in August? Where are you going to be for that?
So this is something that we just found out about when I had mentioned to the fine folks that were helping arrange this. I said, well, I've got plans to be in Idaho in August. I 2 years ago was bothering a property management company up there and saying I'd like to rent a place in Stanley, Idaho. And they said, well, you can't, we can only do about, what was they saying, like 9 months prior, that kind of thing. And sure enough, I had rented and was making plans to rent a cabin in Stanley, Idaho, because it was right in that path of totality. So I thought, well, there's where I want to be, and I'm familiar with Idaho as an area. So I thought that's perfect for me. So I will be in Stanley. I won't be camping with everybody else, but I'm going to be there. I'm bringing the mountain bike and going to try to enjoy everything that Stanley offers and pray for clear skies on Monday.
Well, I hate to pin you down like this, but is there any chance you'll be on the show with us?
I would love to. Yeah, I would be more than happy to do that, and I for sure am planning on stopping by and saying hi to everybody. And I think when I reached out to register, I'd said, look, I'll bring some snacks and some drinks for everybody, but I'm not
Good.
necessarily staying there because I'll be at my own little place. But yeah, that'd be so much fun.
Good. Snacks and drinks. All right.
Yeah, and I'm bringing all my equipment. I'm driving up in days before. I'm bringing everything with me because I'm not going to miss this. And it's also another new moon weekend, so we have wonderful imaging to hopefully wonderful imaging will be had in the nights prior. So it really is just going to be a buffet of astronomical wonderfulness. I cannot wait. I'm getting really jazzed.
And astronomical proportions. All right, Roger.
Yes.
Thanks a million. It's been a blast, and we'll see you on again very soon. I hope, man.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
All right, take care. All right, still to come here on Slooh, astronomer Paul Cox will be back once again to let us all know how we can turn our love of Saturn into live views, just like the one we're looking at right now. And we'll be taking a look into our community content to highlight some of our favorite entries. So stay tuned.
We've been all over the world chasing solar eclipses to share with you. This time, you're coming with us. Join Slooh as we expedition to Stanley, Idaho to celebrate the transcontinental eclipse on August 21st. Sign up today at slooh.com. Space is limited.
Slooh is excited to announce a very special guest joining us from the Planetary Society. On June 21st, we welcome Bill Nye to the show to talk all about the summer solstice and this summer's solar eclipse.
And we welcome you back, Jerry Montour here. It is Saturn at opposition here on Slooh. We're looking live at the gas giant through our ultra-wide field telescope from the Canary Islands in Spain. But how can you look at the planet for yourself? When's the best time to do it? Well, if you're a Slooh member, you can use our telescopes every night to look at all the objects visible in the night sky. And Paul Cox is here to tell us all about how you can do that. Paul, welcome back. So how can members take advantage?
Hi, Jerry. Well, when a planet is at opposition, it's visible virtually all night. It rises in the east as the sun is setting in the west. So there's a little bit of time, an hour before dawn and an hour after sunset, where it's pretty low. But after that, it basically means that members can schedule their Saturn missions virtually all night long. Now, what I was saying earlier on in the show, Saturn isn't well placed for people in the southern hemisphere. If we take a look at our all-sky camera view, for people in the northern hemisphere, Saturn really kind of hugs the southern horizon, fairly low down in the constellations of Sagittarius and Scorpius. I think it's in Ophiuchus at the moment, but it's very southerly. So it never really gets very high in the sky. But it's the total opposite from Chile. And we've got long winter nights at our Chile observatory in the southern hemisphere. And there, Saturn is going directly overhead. So we're looking through very little atmosphere, which means that we get the very best views. Now, we'll take a quick look at that sky chart again, because if people want to just pop out to their own backyard to see Saturn at opposition or any time this week, all you've got to do is look kind of southeast, about an hour after dark, and it will be unmistakable. There'll be this very bright, slightly orangey, slightly red. It'll have more color than the stars. Now, put a pair of binoculars on it, and instantly you'll see that it's not a star. You'll see the same kind of shape that Galileo saw when he turned his telescope to it in 1610. He actually thought originally, Jerry, that the rings, he thought that there were three objects, a planet in the middle and then two little planets on either side. And they were sometimes called Mickey Mouse ears in the 20th century as well. But then a little bit later, telescopes got better, and then they were able to actually see what the ring system was. And I'll tell you, you look through a telescope visually for the first time at Saturn, and if you ask most amateur astronomers, the one fixed memory that they share is their first view of Saturn through a telescope. I mean, I was just speechless. I was breathless, actually. And Roger there was talking about the eclipse event in August. All Slooh members can come along and join us in Idaho for that event. We're going to have telescopes there, both special solar telescopes, but also nighttime telescopes as well. So any Slooh members who haven't actually looked at Saturn or some of the other planets that are visible in August, come along, join us for that eclipse event, and we're going to be doing some nighttime observing. I'm also planning on running a couple of little CCD workshops as well for those people who are interested in maybe starting out a little bit of CCD astrophotography, as Roger said there himself as well. Oh, look at this. Jerry, this view tonight, this has actually been one of my favorites. This constellation view, this enormously wide view, it's about 26 degrees across, and we're looking at the center of our Milky Way galaxy. All of that cloudy, misty looking stuff, that is the Milky Way galaxy arching above those dark skies at the Institute of Astrophysics of the Canary Islands. And there, just right of center, burning brightly, is Saturn. And you can see there that if you go outside and take a look southeast, it's unmistakable. There are other bright stars around, but nothing as bright as that. But going back to the Slooh telescopes, we said it at the beginning of the show, the best telescope to use for the planets is the new Canary 4 Solar System telescope. This has been the one that's been giving us the close-up views tonight. Here it is. Yep. And we saw some of them go a bit muddy, but some of them were incredibly crisp, and we could see that Cassini division that Bob was talking about. Looked absolutely splendid. But that's the telescope to use for planets now, as well as smaller objects like planetary nebula, which are actually kind of sun-sized stars at the end of their life, kind of puffing off their outer atmosphere, like the Ring Nebula. So they look pretty cool as well.
It's just astounding, Paul. All right, it's community content time, and there are a lot of entries in there about Saturn, but you got a few favorites you want to share with us?
Yeah, I got a couple. We'll only skip over these. The first one shows us actually, this one is slightly different. I thought we were going to do this one last, but this is just a beautiful article by actually our producer tonight, Carson Adair. And I'm not going to do any kind of spoiler at all, but anybody should go to the website, look up this particular article called A Glimpse of the Rings. Read Carson's story there. It is absolutely heartwarming. So please go and have a look at that. But we also, Bob was talking about looking at Saturn and its tilt. And there's a post there that shows Saturn over the whole 13 years of Slooh's existence. And it shows this changing tilt of the ring. So maybe we got that image as well. But that's another great one as well. This one is from Samantha M. How Saturn's rings stand out from the rest. And what she's writing about there is that both Jupiter, Saturn, the two gas giants, and the two ice giants, Uranus and Neptune, they have ring systems, but we never really talk about them. And the reason why is they're not very good. But that's a great little article that Samantha has written there, which is just really cool, which says why Saturn's rings are so special.
Well, community content, it's one of our favorite things here at Slooh, and it's a terrific way for people to get involved, right?
It is, and anybody can contribute. So if you sign up, you become Slooh Crew, and you can start reading all of the content, and you can contribute as well. And, you know, there really is, you know, as the show tonight has kind of touched on, community content for Slooh is not just about the science or the astronomy. It's about the human spirit. It's about art and literature. So there are loads of articles. Oh, these are these images that I'm talking about. Look at that. In 2010, we could hardly see the rings at all. And there you can see in that image, Jerry, that's what I was talking about, the oblate spheroid. You could see how squashed Saturn is. It's not a sphere. And I just, you know, this is what Slooh members do. They can track an object like Saturn over years and see the changes in it. They've done the same with Jupiter, spotting the huge changes in Jupiter's atmosphere and belts and watching the great red spot change, shrinking down to virtually nothing and almost going white at one point, you know, a few years ago, but now kind of reddening up. And here's another great capture. Some of these are great. And we can see two of their moons there of Saturn as well, which is pretty cool.
It's extraordinary, Paul. Hey, well done, as always. I was not ready. I was not ready to be blown away the way I was tonight. So nicely done, Good. Paul.
Well, and to you, Jerry.
Really, it's extraordinary. All right, thank you so much. And that's going to wrap it up for us here today. We hope you enjoyed all of our, well, all the images you've seen, all the guests, and our live views of the gas giant Saturn. Of course, a big thanks to Slooh astronomer Paul Cox, our human spirit editor Helen Avery, astronomy journalist and author Bob Berman, and our special guest voice actor Roger Craig Smith. You can join in on keeping an eye on all things happening in space, from meteor showers and comets to the sun, moon, and planets, by making a reservation on our telescopes in the Canary Islands and Chile. Any paying member can reserve time on all of our telescopes looking live at stars and planets and galaxies and nebulae, all sorts of celestial objects and happenings. All right, next week, we are celebrating the June solstice by looking to the future, previewing our massive event that we've been talking about, the August eclipse in just 2 months. We've got some really special guests lined up for that one, including the Planetary Society's Bill Nye, who will be here to talk about all things eclipse. We'll also be joined by Bad Astronomy's Phil Plate and the Citizen Kate Project. That's an initiative uniting astronomy groups, high schools, and universities across the country to participate in a massive scientific study during the eclipse. That's on June 21st, starting at 5 p.m. And speaking of the eclipse, we're in the midst of planning our big road trip out to Stanley, Idaho, as you heard. Paul Cox is hard at work mapping out the journey from Slooh headquarters in Connecticut all the way across the country. There will be no better place to enjoy the eclipse than at our event in Stanley. It's free to Slooh members, and there are still spots available. So get busy and reserve yours now. That's all coming up here on Slooh. So join the community, interact with other members, and tune in. All right, that's it. I'm Jerry Montour. You've been watching Slooh. Have a great time, everybody, and thanks for stopping by.